Well, good morning everyone and welcome to the first of the GIF Firesides chat. As Tom said, my name is Ben Strutt. I'm an independent innovation consultant. Go to benstrutt.com to find out more. Our fireside guest today is Lauren Murrell from By Sarah London. It's an absolute delight to have her here today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, and this is my first time here, so yeah, really looking forward to sharing my story and hopefully chatting with you all afterwards as well.
Lauren, you are the co-founder of By Sarah. Your products have been described by Vanity Fair as a hug in a bottle for your skin. You're a businesswoman, you went to law school, you've beaten the odds of survival in 2 life-threatening situations, and you've created a successful startup with your sister Sarah. Your business brings together all of these things to create a breakthrough experience in the skincare field, and yet you never intended to be an entrepreneur. It is no small feat to take on the skincare category and thrive. So let's dive in. For anyone not familiar with By Sarah, can you give us a brief introduction to the By Sarah business today and your role within it?
Yes, so I'm the co-founder of By Sarah, the natural skincare brand that I founded with my sister Sarah. And we really have created beautiful natural skincare for people struggling with stressed and sensitive skin. We're proud to be a certified B Corporation. We're stocked with Sephora, we've been featured in Vogue, and we've got thousands and thousands of incredible testimonials from our customers who have shared the transformation that they've seen using our skincare. So it's a real pleasure to be here today and share a bit more about my journey and By Sarah London as well.
Thank you. So the theme of our conversation today is how to find courage. And although it is a sensitive place to begin, it is the natural place to begin. The By Sarah brand might not be here now today if it hadn't been for a terrifying period that began in your final year at law school. Can we wind back a decade and a half from this award-winning business that we see today to before the business was conceived, before your world was turned on its head? You did your undergrad at Oxford.
That's right. So I read geography at Oxford University, had the most fantastic few years there, and then planned to go on and start my career in law. So after Oxford, I went to law school just down the road in Moorgate, and I did the first year there. All was going well. I then started my second year, was halfway through that second year, and that's when my diagnosis came of leukemia. And it's acute myeloid leukemia. It was a very aggressive form of cancer, of blood cancer, and I was hospitalized immediately and treatment started the next day. And at the time, they told me I only had a 20% chance of survival. So going from a very fit, healthy, young 20-something to being told your chances are not very good at all, it was a very dramatic pivot in my life. And I really had to get to grips with a very different way of living very, very quickly, because the consequence of that type of cancer is there is no alternative other than prolonged periods of protective isolation. What that means is being kept in my hospital room for 6 to 8 weeks at a time. I couldn't even leave that room, let alone the hospital. So it was a very dramatic period, and I had to adapt quickly through mind, body, and soul to get through the period that was about to happen ahead of me.
And it came completely out of the blue at the time,
Yes.
No warning. So in every part of your body was being ravaged by the illness. What were the very specific needs of your skin at that time?
So what happened was I had months of chemotherapy to start with, which didn't work. I then had total body irradiation, which is, as brutal as it sounds, the whole body is blasted with radiation, and then eventually a life-saving stem cell transplant from my sister Sarah. And that's the real miracle, that Sarah was that perfect match for me and literally saved my life. The consequence of going through all of that treatment was it completely ravaged my skin in ways that many other cancers don't. So it was, really shedding away, very dry, very sensitive, and really hard to manage, on top of everything else. I had lost my hair, I'd lost a lot of weight, and just trying to sort of get through every day on top of my skin, just, really falling apart. So that was really hard to manage, and just another consequence of all of that treatment that I had to go through.
And we have the physical battle going on there, but I can imagine that must have been a huge emotional, mental battle going on as well. How did you stay resilience? How did you stay courageous during those times? Because it's a theme that's come up already this morning a lot, this idea of courage and resilience and so on. How did you play that through? What were your tools?
Yeah, and I think I faced it full on. So I talk about an idea of radical acceptance. And that's really what I did in those early days and weeks. And at that time, I was actually phobic of needles, just did regular blood tests and I would pass out. I was really sensitive to it. So then going from that person to, in a couple of days' time, having what's called a Hickman line, which is where they insert tubing into your chest cavity so they can then insert the chemotherapy that way rather than through your arms. You know, I had this new body, this new tubing in front of me, and really having to accept that this was life now, and really curating my hospital room as well, which is a weird way to think about it. But I really understood that that was going to be home for me for quite some time. And so I put posters on my wall to remind me that life was not just going to be this bland white space forever. I had a poster of New York and I had a poster of the Caribbean to really be those beacons of hope for me that life was going to be better one day soon. But I brought a gym into my hospital room. So I bought a Nordic cross trainer. I was a very fit runner at the time, so the idea of not being able to move was really difficult for me. So I thought, I'll bring the gym to me, and even when I was connected to an IV pump, would move on this Nordic trainer and just try and move my body. Because in moving my body, I was moving my mind to tell myself that it wasn't going to be this way forever, and I would get better. And just that small triumph every day was very motivating to me. And then another thing that I did really to harness the power of the mind was lean into affirmations. And I talk about affirmations and manifestations now, but I didn't have that vocabulary then. It was just an understanding that your mind can be your best friend or your worst enemy. And I chose to make it my best friend. And I remember standing in front of my bathroom mirror in those early days and saying to myself, keep strong, keep really strong, and just reinforcing to myself the strength in my mind as my body was getting weaker and weaker. And so really just an all-round understanding that mind and body are so interconnected, and the more that I could make them my friends and work with me, it was going to help me for the journey ahead.
There's some really powerful metaphors there, I think, for the dark times that innovation teams often find, and trying to focus on that long-term vision and where you're trying to get to and so on. So out of this dark time, though, let's put the silver lining on it. There was this spark of inspiration for an underserved innovation opportunity. You now work with your sister, your life-saving stem cell donor. I mean, these things already define a pretty extraordinary relationship. Sarah isn't here today, but I get a sense that you both have very different but complementary skills to the business. Could you just give a brief overview to her role and background and how that synergy works?
Yeah, so when Sarah saw how ravaged my skin had become, she started to develop skincare at home at the kitchen table, and she understood what my skin would need to really help that skin barrier, to improve that skin barrier function. And so she would formulate skin oils, plant natural oils at home and bring them to me in hospital for me to use. And I didn't think too much of it at the time, just thought, wow, you know, I'm so lucky to have such a wonderful sister and enjoy the skincare. But over the years, Sarah refined her formulations and really started to understand that for people like me that really had stressed and sensitive skin, there is a need for skincare that is really high performing with proven natural ingredients. And she started to think maybe there's a bit of a business here, but didn't do too much with it at the time, and just started to share her formulations with friends and family while I was still making a recovery. Fast forward to several years later, and the stars aligned for us to make a go of it and launch the business together. But being sisters, I was a little bit nervous of, okay, let's make a business, because obviously we care so much about each other that we'd never want to sort of step on each other's toes. So really understanding our own individual strengths. Sarah is very much the product innovator, the brand innovator, and I've developed more of the business side, and that sort of leans on my lawyer background. So having that clear divide on who is responsible for what has been really important and fundamental, that we're so similar in that we've got the same values, but also very different in where our skills lie, which has been a tremendous asset. As you say, it's such a competitive industry, so knowing who we are, what our strengths are, and who we seek to serve has been really important.
So you've given a sneak peek into where the business is today, but so you had your treatment, thankfully it worked, life began to get back to normality, I guess, at some point. I mean, that must have taken a while. I mean, what did you do in that period of returning to normality?
Yeah, well, normal took a really long time. It was months and months and months of treatment in hospital, and then thankfully the cancer was cured and I could go home. But of course I was, not normal and not healthy at that point. It was then sort of, great, you've survived cancer, now you've got to deal with the consequences of all of that, and the collateral damage from leukemia treatment is so brutal. I mentioned the skin, that was one of the consequences. I won't go into the graphics of anything else, but it took a really, really long time to get back to a degree of normality and strength. And even when I was back home, I would rely on my sister and my family to help me up the stairs, to sit up in a chair and get that body strength back again. And just getting my mind back again, because chemo brain is a thing, and your brain is just really fuzzy and fluffy for some time. So it took a really long time, but my focus was still the same in that I was so upset that I couldn't finish my final law school exams when that diagnosis came, and that really became a focus for me, that I was not going to let cancer take my life away. I was going to get stronger, I was going to get healthier, and I did go back to law school, and I finished my exams, and I started my career actually in the city just round the corner. And it was such a triumph for me to live the life I had dreamed of when I was in hospital and become that independent person, striving for my career, and I really, really enjoyed it. So I started my career as a lawyer just round the corner in the city. I then had the opportunity to go overseas, and you may remember I mentioned 2 posters that were on my hospital wall. There was an opportunity to go to New York. So I jumped up and down and said, please, me, I would love to go and work there. And I did, and I moved and I worked in the New York office for 6 months. And having come from a place of such isolation and such, just being so cut off from the world, it was such a moment to be independent in such a big city, and seeing what I could achieve for myself. When I came back to London, that sense of wanderlust was still very strong, always looking to learn and grow and develop. So I thought, where can I go next? That's where the second poster came in. And I moved overseas to the Caribbean and worked in the British Virgin Islands, which you can do if you're a qualified English lawyer. So I couldn't imagine my luck when I arrived, and it was paradise. Aquamarine waters, blue sky. And for me, I just felt so well and healthy and strong, being in a climate that was so warm, and just really felt like myself again, which was only a few years after all of the treatment. So bless my family for allowing me to go. It really wasn't that long after all of the treatment, but I was really hungry for an adventure and growth. So off I went. And then you may recall in the late summer of 2017, Hurricane Irma that crossed the news over in the UK here. I was there on the island when that happened, and I was stuck in a house for 5 days as the hurricane battered the island. The windows, the doors were ripped off the house as 180-mile-an-hour winds ripped through the island. And the house that I was in was shaking, and I thought it was going to slide down the hill, and that was it. So for 10 terrifying hours, as the storm battered, it was just a moment of just pure grit and faith and belief that the storm would pass, and I'd be able to get off the island eventually. But as I say, it was 5 days I was cut off, with no communication, no satellite phone, nothing, until I was eventually rescued and evacuated from the island. Not before. The BBC and their film crew filmed me having a minor meltdown, and that was broadcast on the 10 o'clock news here, which my family saw before they heard me, and I could call them. So, my God, my family have been through it. But happy to say, I came out unscathed and came back to the UK, but I was I was really heartbroken by that experience because I felt so happy and healthy and was just living such an adventure. So when I came back to the UK, I really didn't know what to do next. And that's when I turned to my sister Sarah and said, where do I go from here? And at that point, she had really refined her formulations and really seen there was an opportunity for us to serve an underserved market of people that had that stressed and sensitive skin. So we said, let's start together. And the seeds of By Sarah were born. We didn't start with a 5-year business plan. We didn't raise VC money. We just started very slowly, very organically, knowing our values and knowing who we could serve. And needless to say, we've gone on to create some tremendous success. But I share that story just to give you confidence that if you don't quite know where you're going or what to do, it's okay, because you can figure it out. You don't have to take that linear path. My path has been very squiggly and very all over the place at times, but I think I've got a strong sense of self, and that's helped me to find a purpose in the work that I do. And then the benefit of that is you attract people that are like you, that want to work with a really mission-led business. And that's been a real joy for us as well.
That's great. And for someone who didn't want to be an entrepreneur and didn't have a business plan, you're building a pretty enviable reputation for the science of natural effective skincare. Let's just talk a bit more about the product. I mean, it's a highly respected product, and it seems to me that validation is in two parts. We've got the sort of formulation science, if you like, and then the kind of mission side of it. And I wonder if we could talk a little bit more about those two things in turn. So, first, maybe how you evolve the science of formulating specifically for stressed and sensitive skin. There's a lot of product out there. Yes. How are you going to be different?
Yeah, there's many ways we do it, and my sister Sarah, she is such an ingredient nerd. She knows all of the ingredients, how they work, and she loves it, and that's rubbed off on me, of course. But what we do, we really look for those proven natural ingredients that are really going to support your skin microbiome, support that skin barrier, and specifically, we don't formulate with any fragrance and no essential oils, which you think in many natural skincare brands, that's quite common. But if you've got really stressed and compromised skin, the last thing you want is fragrance or essential oils. But we're not about a brand that's just excluding things, because we're really using innovative ingredients like bakuchiol, which is an alternative to retinol, which is fantastic, because if you've got sensitive skin, again, the last thing you're going to want to do is put a retinol on your face. But using bakuchiol has similar, if not better, properties than retinol. So for us as a brand, we're looking for those ingredients and creating products for people that otherwise would be excluded from those very potent, fantastic ingredients, and making them join the party as well. So we get the most fantastic reviews from our customers that say, we've spent hundreds of pounds on skincare, and now we've found you, and it's really working, and they're seeing the results and the benefits. So it's such a joy and pleasure to see the results that they see, that we know are there as well.
Lovely. And let's talk about mission. The By Sarah list of certifications, accreditations, partnerships, it is frankly staggering. And I think it highlights the strength of conviction for what you do. And we've got all natural ingredients, of course, transparent labelling, vegan, cruelty-free, organic, soil association marks, eco-age marks, batch made in Britain, living wage employer, UK's first independently owned, solely female-founded skincare brand to have achieved B Corp status. Pretty incredible. Can you talk more about how your personal journey has sort of created this, let's say, translation into that sense of conviction to really centre on all of those things and put them at the heart of your mission, your DNA as a business?
Yeah, I think it's been very much a brand evolution that Sarah originally created skincare for me. So it started with, excuse me, that one story. What's so incredible now is that it's the stories of thousands of people in our communities. So we've really gone from a very small, loving place to reaching thousands of people with the skincare that we have, and knowing who we're trying to serve and the formulations that we develop, it's quite clear to us who we are. And so when we're looking for ways to bring that independent validation or verification, looking for things like registering with the Vegan Society, becoming certified cruelty-free, becoming a B Corp, that's just for us the next step to show, don't just take our word for it, but these are our badges we wear with pride as well.
And I mean, I think in an earlier conversation you described this entrepreneurial journey as messy, and I think we're getting a sense of that. People who thrive in innovation tend to be comfortable with ambiguity. Has your experience, your personal experience, the things that you've been through, has that contributed to that ability to deal with ambiguity, to make sense of it, and to channel it?
Definitely. I think through all of these experiences of the last 10 or so years, I've developed a really resilient mindset. I do still have those affirmations, manifestations that I put around me in my office and things like that. And just getting comfortable with uncertainty, because that's where the sweet spot is for growth and opportunity. And just learning to deal with the no's. In the early days, I took it really personally. I wasn't used to being told no. I was, very high academic achiever and was used to a certain way of, doing exams and getting the job and whatever. And then suddenly it's, oh, no, this isn't quite right. And that was really hard, but I've learned that a no is a not yet. And actually, when we have had no's, it's been a fantastic opportunity to take stock of what we need to improve or what's not quite working. So again, it's just a general awareness of listening to feedback and innovating and improving all the time. So that idea of a growth mindset is really important when you're on this journey particularly.
I think being a founder of a startup, especially one conceived during such a sensitive period of your life, makes it feel very personal. You've just talked about that. And I think earlier on in the conversation you said we know who we serve. I think consumers can sense when a brand genuinely cares. Do you find this personal, almost emotional commitment to the product, to your customers helps? I mean, is there a By Sarah community, and can you ask them to do things for you?
I love our community. They are just amazing, and they love to share their stories with us, which is incredible. And as you say, it is a very emotional experience becoming an entrepreneur, because we didn't just say, oh, maybe we'll have a skincare business. It's taken years, and over those years, my confidence has improved and developed. And what started at the kitchen table, I know we can become a much bigger brand. We can support thousands of people, millions of people with the formulations that we've developed and the brand culture that we're building. So it's just that incremental growth all the time. And if there's any Strictly Come Dancing fans in the audience, you might recognize Amy Dowden, who's been sharing her story with breast cancer. And throughout her journey, she's been using By Sarah skincare. And she reached out to us and said, I would love to work with you. I'd love to share how much your skincare has worked for me and my skin. And she did that, and she shared a video 2 weeks ago that's had over 500,000 views. And it's been incredible because it's so authentic to her. It resonates so much with her, what we're doing as a brand and the skincare as well. So that's a big example of a community member really showcasing our brand, but on a more low scale as well. We get emails every day saying, thank you so much. You've really transformed my experience. So yeah, it's a real joy.
And I think you managed to get a customer to go and find some stock that had gone astray for you.
Yeah, that's another. I've got a 5-minute countdown, so maybe that's a story for another time, or you can chat with me afterwards. But yeah, that's another story.
It's a great story. Come and find Lauren in the break. I'd like to take a question or two from the audience in a second, but maybe while you're thinking of your great questions for Lauren, it seems like despite the journey you've been on, finally you are now living the dream, probably despite the long days and the other challenges that come with running a startup. Have there been any sort of pinch me moments?
There's been many, and actually a friend of mine told me the other day, he's also an entrepreneur and on his own journey, and he said, once you achieve your dream, create another one. And I think that's so powerful, because you think you're just going to head towards that destination and then it sort of stops and that's it and hurrah. But actually you achieve that dream and then create another. And that's just so exciting and rewarding to go through life with that mindset. So a dream moment that comes to mind is, and this was a moment of courage, I threw our hat into the ring a couple of years ago to win a mentoring competition with Bobby Brown, who is an icon in our industry, absolute legend. And lo and behold, we won. And we had a Zoom session with Bobby, a couple of Zoom sessions actually. And she was just amazing and so encouraging and so down to earth, and her values just aligned so much, very family minded, and so creative. And that was just a huge pinch me moment, particularly for Sarah, who loves skincare, has grown up with Bobbi Brown's books in her room, which we showed her on the Zoom. And it just shows you, like, wow, even if us as this small skincare brand right now can reach Bobbi and she's connected to what we're doing, you know, the sky is really the limit. So if you can reach out to your idols or people that inspire you or mentors, definitely do it, because it just gives you that bit of motivation and inspiration. So yeah, Bobbi is fantastic.
Thank you.